guys, welcome to Extreme 4x4.
Man, what are you talking about? We've got a Mustang in here. Let me correct them. Hey, welcome to Horsepower. Now, a while back, we built an 830 horsepower big block Chevy for one of the Extreme trucks.
And it's not just any project. It's our full-on mud racing pickup that we're going to throw in some serious slop. And now it's time to return the favor.
And that favor is to finish the cage off in our Turbo Mustang, since he does have all the equipment down here. But first, take a look at what we've done so far. The buildup of our 382-inch small block started with a World Man of War cast iron block that we filled with a Crowder chromoly forged crank, billet rods, forged aluminum pistons from CP, and a roller camshaft. On top, we bolted up some trick flow CNC machine race heads and went with Crowder again for solid roller lifters, chromoly push rods, and topped that off with shaft mounted rockers. The intake manifold's a two-piece setup from Trick Flow, and to feed it, an F90 throttle body from Accufab, plus 160-pound Bosch injectors. Now, our turbo system was put together for us by Hellion Power Systems, and it features an 88mm Y2K Turbonetics turbo. The guys at Hellion recommended Bassani shorty headers with 1 5/8 primaries leading into 2-inch collectors. Now, smaller headers create more pressure to make more boost, and they're mounted backwards because the turbo system mounts up front. The owners of High Performance Controls helped us get the right tune in the engine, one that helped the motor make almost 1,000 horsepower on pump gas and well over 1,100 on race fuel.
Now, this isn't the first time that this Mustang has gone under the knife. It already has a main hoop in place as well as some additional tubing. Now, that was when it just had a 5-liter in it that was naturally aspirated. But Mike plans to put some serious power underneath the hood, so we need to upgrade the cage. Specifically, we need to add some front support here. In case of a rollover, this roof could completely compress down on the driver. Also, by adding these front bars, it will just stiffen up the chassis altogether. Now, we took some measurements on this whole cage that's already in here, and there's a couple of issues. There's some tubes that don't meet at exact intersect points, and therefore they're just adding weight and not strength. This main hoop is a little bit too low for my taste, and we looked at the whole thing over. We decided the best thing to do here is just cut this whole thing out, start from scratch. Now, we designed the entire roll cage using Bentech Pro, and that allows us to visualize all the tubing in a 3-dimensional environment. Now, if we were building this cage for a specific form of racing, we want to check with the sanctioning body to see if they have any design cues that we had to follow. In our case, we're after safety and weight, and the key to that is what's called the intersect points on the cage. You can see if you look at the top view of this roll cage that all the tubes converge to a single point. That's going to carry all the load into one specific spot in the cage. Now, we went even further because there's going to be 2 seats in this roll cage, and we also converged them right down into the middle of the belt line bar. That means if there's an accident with this car, all the weight and everything that tries to get transferred through that cage will be stopped, and will stop in one solid center point. That way, everyone will be safe. We're going to start with the main hoop. Now, for the cage in the Mustang, we're going to be using 1 3/4 120 wall DOM tubing. Now, this size of tubing is specified by most racing sanctioning bodies, so this car should be legal to run on almost any track. Now, the first piece will obviously be the main hoop. We'll bend up a second hoop to become the halo bar up at the roof line. We'll notch it to fit, and then grind the opening to get good weld penetration. And all we have to do is measure for all the straight parts of the cage. Now, Mike's going ahead and he's welding in all the joints that we can get to. Then we'll take the entire roll cage and drop it through the floor to weld the top side of the parts that we can't reach with the cage inside. Then we'll finish weld the cage to the frame, add the tubes that run to the back, and this car is ready for the track. There we go. Hey, look. It fits really good.
All right, this thing turned out awesome. Man, there's only one problem though. You got a big block Chevy out of the deal? I got some bent tube.
Well, I won't bill you for the tubing and we'll call it a deal.
All right, that'll work. All right, this thing's gonna have a lot of power, and with that cage, I'm definitely gonna feel safe behind the wheel.
There's a few more things we have to do here. Once you get your seats in there, Mike, we'll drop in some door bars, and once the engine's under the hood, we'll brace up these strut towers just for some extra safety in there. But aside from that, I think you still got some other work to do.
Yeah, we do. And during the break, we're gonna haul this thing back down to our shop and continue working on the Turbo Stang.
I'm gonna stay here where the 4x4s are.
We're back, and you're looking at the future home of a 1,000-horse pump gas small block. Will it fit in there? Well, we'll find out in a few minutes, but right now, we got to finish up inside. You see, with that open area back there, well, Mike Galley might choke on tire smoke and what have you, so time for some tin work and time to call in another favor. This time, Brett from Muscle Car, man, thanks a lot for coming down. What are you going to do first?
Well, I guess we'll just start off by making some cardboard templates and see if we can get this thing all covered up.
I guess you got a plan for the tin, though, right?
Somewhat.
Okay. Well, you want me to help you?
You can if you want.
I don't want. It's pretty much the same drill with each section. First, paper patterns that Brett tapes together. Then down at the muscle car shop, he transfers the paper template to tin and uses a nibbler to cut it out with occasional help from the hole saw. Next, the bender for a 90-degree angle. And in the case of this large piece, he cuts it in half for easier installation.
You got me!
Hey!
One more panel.
One more. Yeah, that fits nice.
Oh, yeah.
Well, looks like he didn't need my help after all. Looks pretty good. Now all we have to do is Cleco everything in place and it's a done deal. But this piece has got to come out for now for phase 2, which involves cutting on the floorboard a lot. First, to make a channel for a subframe connector using some of the steel tubing. Secondly, well, over the years that floorboard's become corroded and got to be replaced.
While Joe finishes up the cutting, I'm going to bend the subframe connector to match the contour of the floor. With the subframe connector clamped in place, we can begin to weld it. Next, we cut out the trans tunnel, then make a template. By using the template, I made these U-bends to be incorporated in the floor as a seat brace and a mounting point for the tunnel in the floor. Now it's time to fit the seat, and don't forget about the door bar because it has to clear the seat. Then we mark for the first hole and measure for the other 3. Now we can drill them out. Next we can start on the floor with a little bit of trimming and fitting. It's ready to be tacked in place. Using our measurements from the old tunnel, we transfer them to sheet metal and cut it to size. Using a pinch roller, we form it into our new tunnel. With it in place, our floor is almost done.
All right, now that we've got the floor welded in, we're gonna lay some seam sealer on all the joints. Now this is gonna do 2 things. 1, it's gonna keep a lot of the smoke out of the inside of the car during a burnout. And number 2, when we're driving it down the road, it's gonna keep the water from coming up through the floorboard. Make sure you use enough sealer to completely fill the gap. Then using Dupli-Color truck bed coating, Buddy and I sprayed the entire floor and firewall to protect the sheet metal from corrosion and give it a cool look. All right, while that stuff dries, let me show you the seats we're going to use in our Turbo Stang. Now these are the Extreme 1700 series from Scat. Now they feature deep side pockets and great lateral support. Plus they have extra cushioning in the sides to keep you in the seat while you're driving. Now the seat frame is built of all steel and it's been TIG welded for extra strength and durability. Now they also have 5 openings for your racing harnesses, and we got ours in a black velour finish.
We drilled through the floor using the holes we made earlier, then we bolted up from underneath.
All right, now that we have this seat installed, we're done with the Turbo Stang for today. But in a couple of weeks, we're going to bring it back and get it real close to test and tune time. Meanwhile, Joe's on his way down to Georgia, where a hot poker tournament and a car show are going to help a worthy cause. You'll see in just a few minutes. Man, I think this thing needs a little more rake to the back.
Yeah, we got about 3 inches in the back. We
It's
can
going to
do
be
that.
comfortable.
Cool.
This car show proves two things. First, that people are still doing cool things to old cars. Secondly, more important, hot rodders have a big heart. YearOne sponsors monthly Brazelton Bashes at its headquarters in Georgia. They're all fun family outings for car lovers. But this one is special. It's an annual fundraiser to help fight a fatal children's disease called Progeria.
Well, you know, Progeria is very dear to myself and my family because my sister Amy had Progeria. She passed away in '85. And back then, there really was nothing going on to, to help these children with Progeria.
Chip Foose tirelessly supports the mission of finding a cure for Progeria. And Friday night, the chips were down. This weekend's fundraising bash with Chip's name on it began with a poker tournament here in car collector Milt Robinson's Toy Barn. Well, I was proud to be part of this event along with my pals Courtney Hanson, Kenny Wayne Shepherd, and others. But the real celebrity here was Sam Berns, a victim of the mysterious disease that causes premature, accelerated aging.
Just thank you so much. I mean, I know it's Friday and you could be watching baseball or doing something besides gambling. So.
Dr. Scott Berns and his wife started the Progeria Research Foundation shortly after Sam was diagnosed.
And now we're in the midst of the first ever clinical trial, and we have a drug that looks like it may possibly help these kids. And so we made a lot of progress in a short period of time, and we're all part of the team trying to find the answers. So thank you.
Well, thanks to the poker tournament and an ongoing auction, nearly $100,000 was raised before the Saturday car show.
For the community of Braselton to come out in the numbers that they do and support the cause and help us raise money for the private money that it takes to fund to try to figure out what that disease is exactly and how to cure it, it's just phenomenal. And this community comes out in droves every year.
This car show had a little of everything from classics and muscle cars to a limited edition space-age hot rod called the Foose Coupe.
A Plymouth Prowler, completely carbon fiber. It's got a Shelby GT500 motor in it, 500 horsepower. I can't tell you what it weighs, but I know it's really light.
You can often find interesting stories behind cool cars, well, like this Nova with its gold-plated engine, a car that went through an amazing comeback.
The car got destroyed in Hugo. The whole building fell in on the car, and he got real discouraged with the car.
And I settled with the insurance company. I put it in my garage and left it. My sons got together, and I said, I'd like to fix the car. I offered the car for sale, and nobody wanted to give me but $200 or $300, and I wouldn't do that.
And I kept telling him, I said, Dad, don't get discouraged. We can build the car, and that's what led the car to where it is now.
It's gorgeous, I think. I mean, it's priceless to me because of the fact that my son's done it for me.
Like I said earlier, hot rodders do have big hearts, whether it means working on a car for a family member or working on a better future for children like Sam.
You know, it's all passion. Exactly. That's why we build these cars. That's why we want to help the kids.
When you hear someone talking about CCing a cylinder head, that means they're measuring the combustion chamber in cubic centimeters. Now, this information is extremely important to find the compression ratio of your engine with the piston you're using. Now, a lot of you may be saying, wait a minute, the manufacturer gives you those numbers. Well, unless the head is CNC machined, those numbers can be inaccurate. See, the number can change from cylinder to cylinder, and if the head has been milled, that'll definitely change the size of the combustion chamber. Now, you can easily do this yourself at home with a few items you probably have just laying around, like petroleum jelly and rubbing alcohol. Now we got ours with wintergreen because it's easier to see, but you can add a few drops of food coloring to clear alcohol and have the same thing. Now a piece of plexiglass with a hole drilled off to one side, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. Finally, a barrette like this is ideal, but if you don't have one, you can use an eyedropper as long as it has CCs marked on it. There's a little math involved, but it's fairly easy to do. Now we need to make sure there's no built-up gasket material on the mating surface and the combustion chamber is free of any carbon deposits. Now we can install the spark plug the same way you would into your car. Now you want to make sure the cylinder head is on a firm surface and at a little bit of an angle with the combustion chamber facing up. Then we want to take some petroleum jelly and wipe it around the outer diameter of the combustion chamber. The petroleum jelly is there to make a seal against the plexiglass. Now this is the one I showed you earlier that can be easily made at home. Or you can use a fixture like this like we have. Now it's flat on the bottom side and it'll go towards the combustion chamber. Now gently press the plexiglass down onto the cylinder head. Now if you watch closely, you'll see the petroleum jelly spread out and make the seal. Now the hole is in the plexiglass so we can fill it with fluid, and it also needs to be at the highest point in the combustion chamber, which is above the spark plug, so all the air escapes as the fluid goes in. If you're using a barrette, pour in the liquid. Now each milliliter mark is equal to 1 cc. We're going to fill ours up to 150, which will be plenty. Position the barrette over the hole and open the valve slowly until the combustion chamber fills. Take a reading on the barrette, and that's your volume number in cc's. 64 in our case. All right, to check for inconsistencies, make sure you check at least one chamber on both of the cylinder heads. That way you know everything's pretty even and you're not working with two mismatched heads. Now you can remove the spark plug to drain the alcohol from the chamber onto a rag and use the rag to clean the jelly off the head surface and the plexiglass. All right, most piston manufacturers will offer you the compression ratio to their set of pistons with any given combustion chamber size. And just think, the extra money you save doing this at home will give you a little extra cash to buy that new set of pistons.
Whether you race your car, show it, or just cruise in it, here's something you and it will take a shine to. NitroPlate is the original ceramic coating that can give your components good looks and take the heat up to 1300 degrees. Now, while headers come first to mind, it's good for the entire exhaust system, plus other components like, well, intake manifolds, timing covers, control arms, you name it. Now, each coating is guaranteed for 3 years, and prices vary according to the component that gets coated. When it comes to controlling underhood temperatures, DEI's header wrap is designed to keep the heat in the exhaust until it evacuates the engine compartment. The result is up to 50% reduction in heat. That results in more horsepower and engine protection. Now, they've got wrap kits starting at just over $9, plus you can get the stainless steel ties and this high-temp silicone coating to seal and protect your wrap. Well, that's a wrap for this week's Horsepower. Hey, don't forget to join us next time. We're going to show you how to build a stout V8 for your daily driver on an amazingly low budget. See you then.